Well, Lecrae, I wanted to welcome you and introduce you to the Courageous Nation audience.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Honored to have you here. Hey, let's jump right in here. We want to jump right in, and I'd like you to give us three descriptive words for yourself. Give me three adjectives that you would use to describe yourself and why you're using them.
Um, I would say transparent. I'm an open book. I just like being real and authentic. I would say artistic because that's just the way I like to see things come across. And then passionate. When I believe in something, I believe in it. So that's probably three ways I describe myself.
Which it's no surprise because when I was looking at your bio and your accomplishments, you were nominated for two Grammys this year, which is
Yeah.
amazing. Congratulations.
Thank
You're
you.
a husband of three children. Is that right?
Yep. Yep.
Author now. You're a producer, hip hop artist, as everyone knows. You've got some of the many awards you've got behind you there. Uh, I would say maybe tenacious. Also, you got a bit of tenacity in you, don't you?
Some don't quit, huh?
Amazing. What are you most excited about these days? What's the thing that when you put the cream in the coffee, what's coming to the top here?
um, that's a good question. I think I feel like over the last couple years, a lot of seeds have been planted, and just seeing them grow. That I think I'm in a season of my life where I'm investing in other people, I'm investing in projects in the community, and just to be able to see them come to fruition is something that I'm looking forward to. Seeing the hard work and the groundwork that you laid actually become something.
Mhm. I think that's a great way to put it because you've planted a lot of seeds, and
Yeah.
those seeds are now sprouting in unbelievable ways. You use the word ecosystem to describe what you do. Can you talk about that? What is the ecosystem that you have created that you're nurturing, and how is your music a backdrop for that whole ecosystem? Right? People think, well, Lecrae, he's a hip hop artist.
Yeah.
And you are much more than a hip hop artist, as our listeners are going to understand. Describe that ecosystem, how that music is a backdrop, and why the ecosystem that you're creating in particular, what's on your heart, what you're passionate about, is so important.
Yeah, well, as you alluded to, it's bigger than hip hop, but hip hop is a medium that as a kid I learned to express myself through. But I'm the product of a mother who was very passionate about education, made me read a lot of books, and so as I've grown into manhood, I've just taken it upon myself to really try to understand the world around me, and the ecosystem that you're talking about is figuring out how to bring restoration, how to bring peace, how to bring a sense of purpose um, to to the world at large, specifically marginalized and disenfranchised communities because they're the ones that need it the most. And so, obviously, music is one aspect of that. Film and television is another aspect of that. Um, the actual work that goes on in the communities, touching the people is another aspect of that. And so those are just ways that I like to tangibly, audibly, visibly um
Mhm.
help people see that restoration is possible. Whether we're writing books, whether we're making songs, whether we're doing documentaries, whether we're building schools or working in the community, we want people to believe that restoration is possible.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Let's land that plane and talk about the specific things that you are doing. Restoration's obviously a theme in your life.
Yeah.
That is a recurring theme in your life. Tell us why, and tell us what you're doing. For example, with public schools and the
Mm.
west side of Atlanta, you're rebuilding an entire city block, and you're teaching people about money. Because until you get your money right, a lot of life is going to be wrong. It's going to be messed up.
Yeah.
Talk about restoration. Why is that a theme, and how is that saturating everything you do? How is that saturating everything you do?
Yeah. Well, I watched a video with Stephen Curry's wife, Aisha Curry, talking about some of the struggles she was having, and I saw some of the backlash that she faced. And I thought, man, people need a safe place to find restoration.
Mhm.
And I've been wanting to see that happen, across the board. So tangibly, I went to Stanford University, worked with some of the professors there. We came up with some ideas on how to flesh this all out. And I had been working with my good friend Benjamin Wills in Atlanta, which is, the west side of Atlanta, which is one of the toughest parts of the city.
Really
And he
tough.
had a vision to educate the community, not just the kids there, but to educate, from the top down, parents. And so we planted a school there, Peace Preparatory Academy, which has been there for 5 years now.
Amazing.
We're up to fifth grade. A lot of great teachers, jobs been provided, kids have been fed, families have been transformed because of that. I work with Grove Park Association and Oaks ATL, which are two. I sit on the board, and our goal is to create financial literacy and to provide um, housing and security for folks who are being kind of pushed out of their communities. And so we've been able to do that, partnering with Experian and NAACP to provide over $50,000 in funds for them to
Mhm.
stay in their community. And working with the prisons and juvenile justice systems. Those are just some ways that I tangibly try to find myself working in the community to see things happen.
It's amazing. That takes a lot of momentum to do that. I mean, you went from cutting albums into producing, and now the philanthropic work that you're doing goes. I mean, for a lot of people, it goes way beyond the music. The music is that entry point. Maybe it's you can look at it
Right,
the entry for a lot of people of the ecosystem. Tell
right.
me, once they fall into that, what do you want the average person who comes in contact with Lecrae to experience in your ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, my hope um, is to educate those who are probably unaware, is to serve those who are in need, and to provide an outlet for other people to get involved because maybe they're burdened, but they don't know how they can, find themselves involved in this type of work.
Mhm.
But again, if somebody comes across me, I will hope that they would see someone who they can trust to uh, be a catalyzer for restoration in this world. And so figuring out ways to partner with people in order to bring that type of love and that type of hope and healing
Mhm.
throughout the world.
And why has financial education come to the top of your agenda? Why is that so important? I see you smile there. Why is that so important?
Oh man. Well, I mean, I can speak from personal experience and then I can speak from, the sitting on the side of having to mentor people. But I mean, for all intents and purposes, we live in a society that where financial stability and capital are how the wheels turn. And so, if you don't educate people on how things work financially in our society, then they're ill-equipped to function. They're ill-equipped to get ahead. And some people are already, because of infrastructures and systems, behind the wheel. So
Mhm, mhm,
it's providing them with the tools and the understanding to know what to do with the resources when they get them. So they're not creating another cycle of disenfranchisement and marginalization in their family. Because, poverty is cyclical. If you don't figure out how to handle things or how to work your way out of it, it just repeats itself again and again.
mhm.
So we want to see people educated and trained so that they can continue to close the wealth gap and create a future generations of people who know what to do with the
Mhm.
finances that they come into contact with.
Why bother doing all this stuff though? You're already successful, Grammy nominated, you've got albums produced, you've got relationships with all kinds of people who one of the amazing things about you too is you're a collaborator. You've
Right.
got all these connections with other people that you bring in no of your own free will.
Yeah.
Why do all this other stuff when you've got it made?
Yeah, I think it's two parts to that. From a grander narrative part, it's because I feel like I have purpose. And if I have purpose, I think other people do as well. And
Mhm.
so I don't think it's just happenstance. I'm not just a bunch of random molecules. I think I'm here for a reason. And I want to make sure that I flesh that out every day of my life.
Mm.
I think if you narrow that down, um, I my floor is the ceiling of people who came before me. I stand on the shoulders of giants.
Say
And
that again. Your floor is the ceiling. Say that again.
my floor is the ceiling of people who came before me. So I get to walk on the ceiling of so many other people who made sacrifices for me that I may not realize. And so it's my job to pay it forward because I wouldn't be here had they not made the sacrifices that they made. And
Mm,
so I want my ceiling to be someone else's floor in the future
mhm, mhm.
because of the work that I've done.
Super interesting. Hey, before we talk about what that means maybe for your children,
Hmm.
and what ages are your children?
13, 12, and 9.
Great ages, man. I've got a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
Before we talk about your children and what that means in setting them up for success, and we talk a little bit about, there are entrepreneurs listening, there are business people listening, there are mothers, there are fathers, there are people
Yeah.
from broken homes, people who scratch their head when you say broken home. They're like, man, I don't know what that's like, to the
Mhm.
degree of some of our other audience. Before we do that, let's play time machine. Let's play time machine.
Okay.
Suppose the technology exists where you could go back in time and you could visit a younger Lecrae.
Okay.
You could go back. What age would you be? What are you experiencing in life at that time? And what advice would the current Lecrae give that younger Lecrae that would most deeply, most significantly shape future Lecrae?
Mm. Yeah, I'm gonna go, I'd say um maybe around 20, 21 years old. And I would tell myself um that, if you live for people's acceptance, you'll die from their rejection. And you've got to find, your strength, and you've got to understand that you've got value in and of yourself outside of seeking the approval of everyone. Because when you're young, you just want to be approved of so much. You don't realize the capability that's already within you. You don't realize how necessary it is for you to kind of blaze your own trail. You're waiting for that affirmation. And I would just tell myself that, hey, that affirmation that you're looking for may never come, but you are valuable, and you have to continue pushing, you know, despite the circumstances that come your way.
But do you feel that you spun your wheels? Do you feel like you wasted time when you were 21? Tell us about that.
Yeah, I think for me so for me at 21, I was overly concerned with what everyone else thought, overly concerned with trying to follow a path that was safe, and not realizing that I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and it's not a safe route being an entrepreneur. It's risky, and you're young. So think about it. At 21, if you take a risk for 3 years and you fail, you're still in your 20s. So it's like, it's okay. You can fail a few times
Hmm.
and you're still in your 20s. But I think I was
Hmm.
afraid of disappointing people, afraid of not being accepted. And I wish that I would have just kind of
Hmm.
said, you know what, I'm going to step out and make this happen.
You think that fear of failure often, I mean, that's what you're talking about. You think that fear of failure often paralyzes people?
For sure. Yeah, fear of failure is most of us are standing at the edge of a cliff, and in order to become the version of us that we need to be, we got to jump, right? We've got to jump from one side of that cliff to the other. But we're so afraid of falling
Hmm.
that we'll never get to be the person that we've always dreamed of being,
Hmm.
right? So that's that safety net of fear keeps us from progressing a
Hmm.
lot of times.
Well, how do you overcome that fear of failure when, say people are listening right now, they're watching, and they've had serial failures in their lives?
Yeah.
Maybe you can share about some of your failures and how to overcome. How have you, whether it's a mind hack, a spiritual hack,
Yeah.
physical hack, when we work out, when we exercise, it makes our mental state change. The body releases endorphins. But somebody's listening and they've had multiple failures. They're discouraged. They're like, man, I get one more hit and I'm staying down for the count. How do you help somebody become successful when they have experienced so much failure?
Yeah, I mean, you know, from a practical standpoint, I think you've got to look at it from the perspective of a professional athlete, right? It's kind of like it's a season, and that may not have been a winning season for you, but that's okay. There's another season, and you just got to realize that like your life is a book, and that was a bad chapter.
Hmm.
Turn the page, turn the
I like
page and
that.
start over
I like
again,
that. Your life is a
and
book, and that was a bad chapter.
that was just a bad chapter. And then for me, also spiritually, man, I just believe that the for me, I want to emulate the way my relationship with God is how I want to be with my kids. And so what I tell my kids is there's nothing you can do to make me love you more or love you less. So your value's always intact, right? Regardless if you fail or not, your value's always intact. And so if I crumble up $100 bill, I spit on it, I step on it, I say it's worth nothing, it's trash. When I unravel it, it's still worth $100, right? So regardless of what's come your way, regardless of the failures that you've endured, your worth and your value is still intact, which means you can still get out there and still keep going and still keep trying.
Hmm. I like that. That was just a bad chapter. And basically, a novel that's being written, your life's being written.
Yeah.
And what's the role of personal responsibility, accepting personal responsibility? You've had to do that in your own life. You've tried just about every drug, you said, except heroin and crack.
Yeah.
A lot of people might not know that if they're newer to you.
Right.
From promiscuity,
Yeah.
you thought that Christianity was for older people.
Yeah.
You went to a Bible study. That's where you met your wife.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, these people are like me, except their character is different.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about that a little bit in regard to this. And what do you want to say to encourage somebody who's listening right now, watching right now?
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm a firm believer that I'm not just a bunch of random particles and atoms. I think I'm fearfully made and created with value and purpose. I think that I'm put here for a reason. And so um it's important for me to tap into that. It's important for me to understand that if there's a higher moral standard, if there is a such thing as good,
Hmm.
um then I need to lean in that direction because we all no nobody drifts into integrity, nobody drifts into hard work, nobody drifts into discipline.
Hmm.
We drift into lies, we drift into laziness, we drift into poor character.
Hmm.
So you've got to climb uphill to walk in humility, integrity, discipline, you know, nobility. That takes work. That takes effort.
Hmm.
And I think that's extremely important for us to remember that it's not something you're just going to stumble up upon. It's something that you've got to be intentional about. And for me, it's putting myself around individuals who are like that. So if I notice that there are some gaps in my character, who are people I respect to look up to and see that they are soaring in areas I'm not? And how can I put myself around them or read their materials? Lions run with lions, thoroughbreds run with thoroughbreds. If you want to be an eagle, you don't hang around pigeons. And so you've got to put yourself in a position to be around those type of individuals.
Along with that, that's excellent. Let's talk about there are a lot of self-sabotaging behaviors
Mhm.
that I know I have in my own life, people have in their lives. Let's talk about you. vulnerability opportunity for you, right? You talked about being transparent. What would you say is the biggest self-sabotaging obstacle that Lecrae deals with? The biggest self-sabotaging thing that you're aware of, it's there, it looms large, that you've
Mhm.
had to attack, you'd had to tackle that in your life, or maybe repeatedly tackle it in your life.
Yeah.
What is it, and what steps do you take? If you can think about tips, advice, input for people who are watching, listening, for their self-sabotaging behavior, what is one that you've had to deal with that maybe comes to your mind that you'd be willing to share with us, and what you're doing to overcome that?
Yeah. Well,